I'm going to do a quick talk now about Workbench, which I think you've probably all seen. Is that right? I know most of you have. So my background is more, well, I've come from a scientific background really through Fortran and so on. I'm not a computer scientist, so my background is a bit different from probably some of yours. So this won't be a kind of in-depth look at the code like maybe a bit later on. But I thought I would give you some idea of how the thing actually works and how it's integrated with the rest of the Eigenlabs stuff, but not in great detail, because I don't want to just give a sort of sales talk for Workbench, mainly because you've all got it ready. So the Workbench, and what is it really? Well, it's really a signal flow diagram for the setups in Eigenlabs, really. I think, as you've all found out, and it really what I see it as a setup visualization, a tool for building setups, a tool for adapting other people's setups to your own uses. But I think this one, the learning tool for Eigenlabs, is probably where it's like coming into its own. Really, it's immediately, it's immediately explaining what's going on to people, and they're suddenly sort of seeing the light, I think, and hopefully that's what it'll be. That's what it'll do. So, what we've got with the Workbench is a user interface written in C++ using Juice. The GUI framework thingy, and then that talks to a backend in Python with its own Workbench agent, which is an agent like the other agents. So from what you do in the GUI, goes through to the backend, and then makes calls out, RPCs out to other agents in the system. Which changes stuff, tells them to do things, whatever. Looks at them, analyses them, and then this database here picks up those changes. Jim might talk about that later on, but picks up those changes back into the backend and back into your back into the GUI. So it's always doing this thing, which Jim will talk about later. But there being no central program here. Or Workbench itself isn't the central program. When you connect something up, you're not doing it in Workbench as such. It's going out to the other agents in the system, looking at them, changing something in them, and then I'm reflecting that back in the Workbench GUI. The Workbench agent itself, this holds all the data for. All the GUI stuff, really. That stuff isn't in the individual agents themselves. It's all in the Workbench agent. So the sort of XY coordinates of agents on your screen, whether they're expanded or contracted, that's all in the Workbench, held in the Workbench agent, which doesn't need to be there either. The Workbench agent can come and go, and that shouldn't make any difference to your setup as such. The other thing in there, the trunk things on the Workbench GUI, like the hooks and the trunk, the cable guide things, they are completely within the Workbench. They're nothing to do with anything else. So that's all in the Workbench agent. The routes taken by the wires when you route a wire through the system, that's nothing to do with the other parts of the system. That's all in the Workbench agent. And these unconnected wires, when you draw a wire and leave it for a minute, or that's in the Workbench. It's not another part, not in any other part. Right. So I've got a couple of examples of just what's going on when you do something. So if you've all done this, create an agent. I'm going to create a drummer, and you see in the drummer little box appears after some time. A short delay and the drummer appears because Eigenlabs has gone away and created a drummer. What's going on there in fairly basic terms, we click on the thing, select the drummer in the list, click OK. And we call into the Python backend. Well, first of all, actually save the XY position of the click, call into the Python backend. That sends a RPC call to Eigend, add module drummer, whatever. And then sometime later, of course, this is all, it's all up to Eigend when it does that. I can't hang around waiting for it, but it creates a new drummer agent. In fact, the drummers sometimes takes some time to create because it goes through this thing of creating its database of loops or whatever it's doing. Then, the little database thing picks up that and tells the Python backend that a new object's been added. And of course, this is the same if you've created that. If you've created that drummer using some other Eigen commander or whatever you've taught. So yes, it's all fairly straightforward. We get then an agent created thing from the back end and draw the agent box on the screen. So that's the kind of thing that's going on. All the time with Workbench. Oh, and then of course save the state again. Save the Workbench state so it knows that there's a drummer agent has an XY position given by that. Just one more quickly. We're doing something like making a new connection, dragging this wire over a hook and into the audio agent. What's going on there? Well, I'm not going to run through it all, but you see the same kind of thing on the GUI side. First of all, it's creating this what I call a loose pin, which is a end of a wire, not in the rest of the system. It's just a Workbench thing, a GUI thing. Create that, save the state, draw the wire, save the state of the Workbench again. Whenever you move that pin, you save the state and draw the wire. And drag it over a hook, save the Workbench state again, and that's all in the GUI, as it were, in the Workbench agent. And then we drop it. If you drop that pin on some agent, we do this connect call, which is using the plumber code to do a connection. Then, it's the same code that you would be using if you do a connection in the commander, tell something to connect to something else. So do that connection. This sends an RPC to the drummer. No, not the drummer, sorry, the audio, saying it connected to the drummer. And again, that connection happens outside my system, as it were, picked up by the database, and it's coming back from the back end, then agent change, get connections, a whole role of keeping track of everything. And then back in the GUI, create a new wire. Oh, I forgot this bit here actually. This is the silly saving the root of that loose connection before you make the connection. So you've got all that routing information where you've drawn that wire, and then add that into the new wire when it's created by Eigend really. Right, one more sort of thing which I think rigs. Well, they're really in their present incarnation. They've been through several incarnations, and now in Workbench, I think we've come up with a very useful sort of definition of rigs, as it were. You've probably all seen them. You can define a rig agent, which in a sense contains a lot of other agents, which hides a lot of complexity on these Workbench diagrams. Before we had that facility, the diagrams were enormously complex. Really, there's so many connections in there. It's very hard to make head or tail of them. But now, with this rig thing, we can create a rig and then we can click on this little button here on the rig and open a new tab, which has all those internal agents of the rig. So it turns out, in fact, for Workbench, this model of rigs is very straightforward, because what we're actually doing is almost just repeating the same thing inside the rig. It's almost a repeat of the rest of the thing. So it works very, very well for Workbench. We've just got another view, if you like, another workspace, and that's got its own Python backend, and it's got its own Workbench agent. So each rig has its own Workbench agent, which deals with all that positioning stuff, and is saved with the rig setup. So in fact, as far as Workbench went, this model for rigs is very straightforward and elegant, really. Right, just to finish off then, the next steps. Well, the first thing is just stabilisation of what we've got, really. There's still a few crashes and stuff in there. Error feedback improvements, I've said. Or could you just call that error feedback? I mean, I hope. I'm not. We obviously need that in there, but I hope from just looking at those diagrams of what's going on in there, you can see why that is not the most straightforward thing in the world to do, because all that stuff, creation. When you create an agent, it's created somewhere else, which is unconnected with Workbench. It's not like Workbench is just creating an agent or doesn't, and therefore it should immediately tell you what's happened. It's quite a process, and the whole process of error feedback via Bel Canto, which is what we need to do for that, is it's not just a Workbench issue, that's what I'm saying. It's something we need to address in a bigger way than just Workbench, really. But it does need it. Property editor improvements, some more stuff. These are just some ideas, from a list of endless ideas, really. Saving the setup directly from the Workbench, which I've found. I mean, you just want to do that, I think. Undo functionality. Locking positions is a fairly easy thing to put in, colours of wires and so on. This thing is sort of connected to what we've just been saying, that, I mean, the first time Dave used Workbench a long time ago now, he wanted to do that, cut and paste agents. Can't understand why you wouldn't be able to do it, because it seems like you should be able to do it, and etc., really. So anyway, that's my talk.